Awesome. So I think we can directly jump into this. Thanks again for your time for today morning. We have your bios on the website so people kind of understand your professional inclination as such. How I would like to start at least this panelists to go around the table and just introduce yourself in the way of what you do for fun and what might be your hobbies or your inspirational elements as such. So we can start. Mark, let's start with you.
Sure. So hobbies and interests. I like canoeing, kayaking, things like that. I live out in the country and I like walking around the woods. And because I live in the country, I spend most of my time on a mower. So awesome. My hobby ends up being mowing endlessly and occasionally enjoying the outside.
That's fantastic. Canoeing and kayaking. I love kayaking. Canoeing, I'm not that much of an expert as such, but it's just wonderful to be on the water whenever one can. Mm-hmm. Let's go for the next, Mr. David Thimm. How about you? What do you do for fun, David?
Oh yeah, fun. I tell you what, anything outdoors. So I'd love to just be outside and on the river, in the woods, walking around. Never know what you can see. It is fall fungi season, so a lot of good fungi popping up in the woods. And motorcycling is kind of my passion. So whether it's dirt or street, traveling cross country, just love to be on a bike and ride and go places and just go down a new road you've never been down before.
And you already owe a bottle of whiskey to Josiah now.
I do. So I enjoy whiskey, so that's what I always offer as gifts and bartering with.
I like that perspective. Awesome. Mr. Eric, nice to see you. How are you doing?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Hey, so far so good. Really beautiful morning so far. So what if the sun is not there? We had our.
I love those pictures in the background there, Jivak.
Yeah, that's. I think I did not. I should introduce myself. What I do for fun too. That's a nice note. So I love bird photography of all the things, and I go to obscure places at obscure times to click these amazing beauties as such. So that's what I do when I have time. And then I do obstacle course racing also. I love that. Somehow I just started doing that a few years ago and enjoy that. And for fitness, I do kickboxing or just fitness boxing as such. So that was about me. But about you, Eric, what do you do for fun?
Everything outdoors, kind of like David. Not a motorcycler, but everything else. Backpacking, hiking. It's bow season, so hunting season is about to kick into full gear. But passionate wise, woodworking is a big part of my life from a standpoint of design, reverse engineering things that designers present to me. So you were talking a little bit about just breaking things apart and seeing how they work. Actually, Josiah was, and that's a real passion of mine to be able to figure things out kind of as a full design and then work backwards and figure out how I'm going to do it from a one-off scale is challenging, and I enjoy the challenge of that. But as far as for fun, I'm willing to try just about everything.
Just about everything. I like that. It needs to be a big, fearless person to do that. Awesome. Thank you again for joining. Jeff, what do you do for fun?
Lots of things. I like classic cars. I like old tractors. My mother's side of the family were all farmers. I actually bought a 1955 Farmall Super C from my uncle, who bought it brand new back when. So what is that? 45. That's a 65-year-old tractor I have in my hobby barn. I love classic cars. I like cars in general. I've run cars around MIS about 165 miles an hour. That was really fun. Had the interesting experience of a couple of years ago. If anybody knows the name Brad Kozlowski, he's from Michigan. He races it in NASCAR's top circuit. I happened to be crossing the Mackinac Bridge when they closed traffic down, and they had Brad run his NASCAR car across Mackinac Bridge for a publicity event, probably pure Michigan thing. And I found out that the next day they literally took the engine out, hauled it over to Mackinac Island, and they towed it around the island. So, wow. Total sidebar. But so I like things like that. I like exercise. I've been a runner in the past. I never did. I ran a half marathon. I should have run a marathon when I was in shape. These days I walk. I'm on a the mission quest to walk the equivalent of the Earth at the equator, and I'm about 2/3 of the way there from walking every day for about the last 7 or 8 years. So,
Wow, that's
me.
that's a pretty interesting goal. I like that, the way you
Yeah, keeps me out there.
context around it. And do you have a time limit for that, going around the equator?
No, it's when I get done, but I average probably roughly 5.5 miles a day. So you can do the math of 24, almost 25,000 miles divided by 5. It's going to take me that many days. And like I say, I'm close to 15,000 miles.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. I've never managed to see that in a distance like that. That's pretty nice. So
I do the everyday thing because it gets so easy to put it off. And the last time I stopped exercising, I'll do it tomorrow. And this gets me out there every day, come rain or shine, come twisted ankle or back pain or whatever it might be. I get out there every day at least for a couple miles. So,
and that tells a lot about connecting back to the world of innovation. Also, the element of discipline of how to keep on doing either walking or doing on innovating, that incremental part of it, a little bit better, a little bit faster, a little bit lighter weight, a little bit cheaper. All those things can be done in an incremental way as you go along. Doesn't every time has to be in big giant leaps as such.
Right. And it's funny. My brother, who's also an engineer, my background's electrical engineering. He looks at it as wasted time. What the heck are you doing out there? You could use that time for something else. And well, it's actually not wasted time. I read a lot when I'm walking. I do a lot of thinking. I do some of my best thinking, I think, when you're out there on the road and, got nobody bothering you except yourself. So.
Awesome. That's pretty interesting. Thank you again from the panel for at least bringing in that personality, character that people typically might not be knowing about you. So let's, the context of our let's say session is understanding what's in the minds of startups, younger startups as such. And we will try to see where the exciting parts of the journey, what are still, how long is the journey, what might be the pitfalls, and how we can, the entire thing is in our audience, we are having, let's say, wannabe startups, people who eventually want to emulate you or learn from you. So as we go forward, we will try to go and touch upon the points which excited you, which prompted you to start something. We'll cover those, but we'll also try to cover things about what you would learn or what you have learned in the hindsight to help them go and tide those kind of an abyss as we go forward. So we can start with anyone anywhere as such, but let's say Mark, do you want to let us know how you started this journey of, let's say, in the startup world, and what prompted it? What was that kind of an inflection point for you to consider jumping on this side?
Yeah, so my father had been a long-haul trucker late in his career. He was in sales most of his early career, but around 55, he started driving a truck. And he saw these people driving Ford F-150s in commuting traffic every day to work. And he thought, why do they have that? And it was because they own a boat or they own something that they have to haul around on the weekend. And so he had this idea for essentially 4 wheels in a box that would connect to the back of your Prius and had a synchronizer with it that would allow you to, attach a camper or anything to it without having to own a truck. So he had an idea for this auxiliary drive system. And my father had pancreatic cancer at the time, and I was working with him to help realize, bring that to market. And with that, I got connected to Neeraj Chumole, and Sachin Gupta had worked with me at Cisco Systems for years. And so I spent most of my career there. And we got on the phone every Thursday night for an hour and started to talk about, if we were going to commercialize this thing, what would it look like? And we ended up saying, okay, the consumer market's not really great. We need a commercial product in order to have enough capital to bring it to market. And so we evolved that into an electro-hydraulic hybrid system that we eventually would submit a patent for and receive. And so that's where we really got started. Was we had an idea and it was inspiration from my dad, but when we started talking about it, a whole new group of applications came out and a new way to approach the problem. And it was that spending a year talking for an hour a week about what we were really going to do before we did anything, started a company, left our old jobs, any of that stuff was the key. And then, I really think about the difference between a small business and a startup. And I don't think folks focus on this. What does it mean to be a startup versus a small business? With a small business, you are, entering a market. So you're opening up a bakery. There are other bakeries, and you're trying to sell things that people want to buy more. In a startup, you're trying to disrupt a technology. You are starting a technology up, and you have to displace some other one. And so to do that, you're going to have a lot of upfront time where it's really about the design of the product, what does the market really need? So when you talk about the pyramid from your last discussion, the user experience, rationalizing the capabilities, those sorts of things. We really focused on that before we put much pen to paper. And so first step is, what do the customers want? And usually you go out and do voice of the customer. Well, we were targeting the utilities market, and what had happened in the previous generations of folks is they went out and they said, what would you like? And the utilities said, well, we would like auto start. We would like to have. So what this thing does is it goes on a bucket truck and it allows you to run the bucket when you're parked instead of having to run it off the engine. So we went to a utility and we said, we've got this thing that'll save you money on braking and it provides export power. It'd be great for your bucket trucks. And they were like, well, these trucks don't really drive much. So we said, all right, well, we'll drop off the regen braking portion and just focus on the module that provides export power. And then we would have this iterative process. But typically, if you did a VOC activity with customers, they'll tell you everything they want. And that's what happened in the industry previously. Everybody built exactly what the customer asked for, which had all of this automatic capability in it. And as a result, they had a product that cost too much, did way more than the customer would ever actually pay for, and decreased the value of their product over the long term. We saw all of those things as trying to figure out what the customer needs and what their real experience in the world is, and pushing back a lot on what they were asking for instead. And that's how we eventually got to this product, this application, and then a general ability to fit across multiple markets. That's a long answer, but that's where we started.
No, that's pretty interesting, Vincent. So the thing was, it was advantageous for you because you were very near the problem. You were studying with your dad. You were in, let's say, the boots on the ground to understand those kind of pain points as a user, rather than somebody coming from outside saying, hey, that looks like a lucrative area. Let's go and, let's say, build something over there. And that's what I think one of the elements is from the startup community, where they might be going through the frustration, the aggravation, the pain points themselves, and then why is somebody not doing it? And then maybe technology helps in that particular area. Was that the way finally to go in, or?
Well, we had no idea what we were wading into. I think that's another thing, the politics, the influences in the market, the previous experience. And so, yeah, it was iterative and there was some risk. I mean, I cold called the fleet manager for one of the utilities when we were nobody, and he agreed to meet us. And I think he almost thought it was quaint that we thought we could accomplish so much. But developing that relationship over time, they became our largest customer and led to most of the other market growth that happened after that. So the boldness of calling up, but also the naivety of not knowing the impact of what I was about to do and what it was doing also was a big deal. I love the expression, you get 100% of what you don't ask for. And so we have to ask for stuff that you think somebody's going to say no to. But just because you think they're going to say no, it doesn't mean they don't have their own motivations and their own desire to solve this problem too. And so finding us as people who are willing to do it as an outside engineering effort enabled them to achieve their goals. And without really knowing what their goals were, we've hit some folks who don't care about energy efficiency or anything. They just want to do blank thing. And then other folks have their internal goals, external pressures, all of these things that led us to this solution. So having a great idea is awesome. Having a market for it doesn't necessarily come along. You have to have people who are willing to take the risk to jump into something new to achieve their own goals and to see you as a vehicle for getting them there.
Absolutely. And it's a hard decision also to make about doing that jump. But I think, as you mentioned, the naivety, sometimes being non-encumbered by the perceived obstacles or barriers in that world actually is a huge liberator to come and do something bold and meaningful. Let's go around the table. Eric, you have been in the world of actually, let's say, we can talk a little bit more about, let us know what you do for, let's say, your day job, and then when you saw something or you had an idea, what was the genesis of all those things? Can you expand on that?
Yeah, it's kind of a long answer as well, but by the way, is my sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I guess the technical answer would be going back to my college days at Lawrence Tech. I had a professor there, Ken Cook, who he holds several patents himself, and very technical mind, very observant mind when it comes to issues that face kind of like everyday people, whether it's, he had some traffic signal patents and different things like that, but he had a mind that never stopped. Okay. And so his biggest challenge for us as students in engineering technology courses was to never stop thinking, even in your day job, whether it be, you're in construction or you're, let's go complete opposite, cake making or whatever it might be, finding some kind of solution for people that people just overlook. And the product that you guys have created for me and through this process, which was fantastic, was one of those things. In my schooling was in construction management and engineering technology from Lawrence, and I had always had ideas, and it was like, for anyone out there who has ideas and they're like, oh yeah, I'm sure it's thought of, and they don't research it. Okay. It happened to me several times. I would come up with an idea, and then a year later, after I did nothing with it, I saw it on the market or whatever it was. It was just a fleeting idea. And then I started writing them down and starting to like develop them. And this was the first one I actually approached a company about developing. And it was kind of a hole in the market from a standpoint of what was already available to the construction industry. And I guess that's where I started, like my thought processes come from experiential development. What am I doing in the field? What can make it better? And mine being a stilt that is a void in the market was how it started for me with this one. And I guess I owe a lot of that to that professor at Lawrence from a standpoint of, and I never overlook those people that kind of challenged me in my upbringing, whether it be my dad, who was a very critical but constructive person, because my background being building, it actually started with woodworking. And when I said in my introduction that I reverse engineer a lot, that's really what I do like daily, is I'll get a design from a designer for a one-off piece of furniture or some kind of crazy built-in. And anyone who knows estate home stuff, you see stuff that you don't see anywhere else. And whether it be mechanisms to open and close doors or floating shelves or whatever, they present you a design, say like David would or you would or Josiah would, in basically a picture. And now it's my job to find how that's going to work. How am I going to float that? How am I going to structure that back? Researching the market to see what's available to make that happen. And again, what I enjoy the most about my day job is that ability to have some freedoms to say, okay, well, this will work, or this doesn't work at all. We can't make this happen, guys. So we need to redesign it to actually make it work. So from that standpoint, I never let my mind go stagnant from my daily job, because I'm always thinking, what can make life easier. And a lot of the times, you come up with an idea and you're like, okay, well, it's already taken. So great, but in the same sense, never stop thinking.
And that's beautiful, Eric. The thing is that you mentioned about, like, as you said, many people might be procrastinating that too. Like, hey, I have these ideas, and then you suddenly just like, dang, if only I would have,
Yeah.
I could have, I should have. But then coming back to your real world decision of now finally taking that step to do it, how hard was it? Means typically, I think connecting back to a Mark or you, either you relieve or let's say take a break from the corporate world if you are, and then actually completely single-mindedly do and put into the let's say the product or the idea, or you still keep your day job and then try to put an incremental thing over here. Those two, let's say, if often the fork in the road happens, how do you think about that, and what should be the message out to people? Like, because some people are vehemently come and say, like, if you have to be all in and start on your newer idea, if you so firmly believe in that, versus maybe in your case, you are still keeping your mainstream elements going on, and then somehow finding time to do this. How
Yeah,
to dichotomy?
it's difficult.
That's
So,
why we have you answering that.
yeah. So I truly, I grew up in a builder's home. I enjoy waking up every day and doing my job. I do. I love it. And just like you guys, I know how passionate you are about what you do. And it seems like Mark is passionate about what he does and leaving his job and doing his own startup. And that is a very, for me, like that's a life altering decision. If you're going to leave your job, maybe you don't like your job, then that's great. But for
Yeah.
me, I love what I do. I'm a people person. I love to deal with clients. I love to do that kind of, hands-on type stuff. And so for me, that's not my route. I have a lot of things vying for my attention, whether it's my kids or, my daily life, my work that I enjoy doing. And for me as a person, I want to make sure that whatever I do, whether it's chasing dreams or it's not about the money, it's really about fulfillment in life. So I want to be happy with what I'm doing. So for me, it's an easy choice to come up with ideas, whether I'm an inventor or whatever I take to you guys in the future for development. I see myself more as looking at my job as almost a hobby as well. Okay.
Oh.
And when you can look at your job as a hobby, that's fantastic. So if I can do that and I can make my living and I can live well and still do the things that I'm also passionate about in helping other people with design, coming up with ideas and research, working with you guys, which is a blast. That's kind of where I want to be. Is enjoy my life, enjoy my everyday life, and be able to produce possibly some products that change my field or someone else's field.
I like that. I like the 3-word quote you had. My work is my hobby. I just enjoy that because you have to be really fulfilling and satisfying at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Let me just hold my thoughts further on you. Let's go to Jeff. Jeff, from your perspective, you have been in this world, you have been helping and being a part of the startup community yourself, apart from mentoring. How did your journey start with Bob and your product? I would say Genesis as such.
I'll give 2 quick stories. I'll give the overview of how I got started in startups, and this goes back to the mid to late 90s. I was in the MBA program at the University of Michigan, about 3/4 of the way through, and I hit a 2-class sequence. Essentially was about raising money and dealing with investors. An example I took was a technology that I was working with at my employer at the time that it really wasn't their mainstream technology, and it was what if we spun this out into a company? Over the course of about 1.5 years, it became very real. Became my first startup. I was the CEO. We raised millions of dollars. And ever since then, I've been engaged with startups in some way, shape, or form, sometimes diving in as founder, sometimes being pulled in to help, which is the case as with Bob. We've the company that I'm here on behalf of is Personal Cooling Technology. We have created, and when I say we, largely Bob, the founder and inventor, has created a tiny, compact refrigerator, approximately the size of a thermos, for the storing of prescription drugs that need to be refrigerated. There are something over 5 million people in the United States that take prescription drugs that need to be refrigerated. And amazingly, a study from a few years ago showed that only 1 in 8 stored their meds properly at the proper temperature. And as the meds get outside the temperature range, the efficacy goes down, they can go bad and actually cause health problems. So this is what spurred Bob to start thinking about this. And he ultimately built a prototype that's been working for a couple of years now that he uses of this small refrigerator. Very, very precise, stays within 1 or 2 degrees. So that's the problem we're solving, is for people that are on the go. It can be powered in your car, obviously powered in your house. You can place this refrigerator. It's compact enough, in fact, it stands on end. You could put it in your master bathroom or in your master bedroom, tuck it away in a corner somewhere. So it's very convenient to where a person might take their meds. And that was actually one of the things that spurred Bob on. Was he has a big house. He was forever forgetting to take his meds out of the refrigerator in the kitchen. And he estimated probably between 1/4 and 1/2 the time at night when you're supposed to be taking his drugs, he'd say, heck, that'll take him in the morning, which you're not supposed to do. You're supposed to take them on time, of course. So that's what spurred him on to create this. The device works very well. As you know, you guys have been working with us on this. I happen not to put a slide together, although if I could pull it up if you release the screen to me, or if I did a share screen, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah, I can do a share screen. I'll just do this really quick, just to show a picture of what the product looks like in its current state. Everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is the product as it stands today. We are at a very exciting time, literally just getting to from the prototype design, which I viewed as kind of elegant, to this much more attractive design, much more functional, having worked with Sundberg-Ferar. We are just to the point of reaching the first functional prototype. I would call it almost a pre-production unit, because it's a much more advanced design, a much more elegant design, as we show here. I can scroll down, and this shows the refrigerator itself, the shell. And again, think of this as roughly thermos-sized, or perhaps a loaf of bread, approximately that size, that can stand on its end, as we show here. The chamber storing the drugs is here. It can store vials of drugs. It can store the syringes that are typically used for diabetes and some other meds. And then just a few more shots. There we go, really sensitive. So that shows the chamber opened here. So this is where the meds are stored, and that goes down inside the body of the refrigerator. There shows another piece of blow up, close-ups, and here we show standing on its end, so you get a sense of how that works. So again, a nice compact refrigerator that can be, all right, how about I turn your screen sharing there, stop that share.
This is probably another one of Eric's ideas that he had a year or so ago.
No, that's fantastic. I love that. That's great. I mean, that's drawing from an issue that he had, and that's awesome.
Yeah, and there's the numbers are large. Like I say, over 5 million in the U.S. and of course a multiple of that worldwide. Not expecting to sell to all those people. Actually, early adopters have already been expressing interest. We've done some focus groups. The response has been fantastic. We are, I'll say, doing it right in that it's kind of been step by step. I know, Jivak, you asked for highs and lows. The highs are, it's always exciting. I love startups. I love bringing new products to market. And I've been kind of serving as the director of commercialization, working with Bob. I'm always frustrated that I want things to happen now, and they don't happen now. Physical products take time. It takes design cycles. It takes iterations of design cycles. So the test for me is always in the patience, having the patience for those things. But Sundberg-Ferar has done a great job with the design work, and we're anxious to get this fired up. And ultimately, we're going to plan a pilot study at this fall, a trial really this fall. Doesn't require any FDA clearance for this. It's just a refrigerator in a sense. But it's intended to make it much easier for people taking refrigerated meds to safely and securely and privately. You could tuck this in the corner in your office, your cubicle at work, so people aren't asking you, hey, what's that?
Yeah.
So anyway, with that, I'll be quiet and pass on.
No, that's beautiful. And David, I will just have a question for you. But before that, right now, Jeff, what you said is we're seeing a thread over here. Means, let's say Bob, he was faced with a problem, a pain point in his own house, and he wanted to in a way solve that. And that's pretty good to solve it for yourself. Jeff, how did you and Bob then? What were the next steps? Like, hey, I know I want this, but this is a complex, in a way, complex product. There are 2 or 3 different systems over there. It's a physical product. How did you try to, I would say, the use case? How did you try to gather elements about that? If it's because I know it's a great use case, by the way, means we are involved with it, but USA, the amounts of I would say baby boomers or the age brackets going up, and the requirements for them, diabetes or otherwise, all those mega trends are going to support that. But then, what was that kind of an? What were the barriers, if at all, there way to go from a single person's use case to trying to get it across a target segment? How was that journey?
Well, of course, we're in midstream in that journey, if you will.
Sure.
We've been at this. I've been working with Bob probably, certainly at least a year, probably even 2 years if I go back and look at how long we've been working together when we first met and started working on this, working on the idea of commercializing this. As I said, Bob had built the first prototype himself. I've seen a lot of first prototypes, and his was one of the more beautiful first prototypes I've seen, thanks to 3D printing. But we've, along the way, we've done a lot of customer discovery, which is, my end of the business. What does the customer want? What do people want? What are the features they want? How much are they willing to pay? We've done a lot of steps and engaged others. I mean, I've done a lot of customer discovery in my time, and I did a lot of that early on. But along the way, we've also engaged some external resources who are, deeply expert at, direct-to-consumer marketing, for example, and market research and focus groups. We didn't do the focus group. We engaged an expert to do the focus groups. Bob and I sat in a room with the proverbial dark mirror, watch this goes on. And it was fascinating to go through that process and, see the feedback that the people were giving and how they thought through things. And it raised things that we never, ever thought of. One of which is, down south. We did a focus group up north here in Michigan, and we did one in the southern state during the summertime. And interestingly, when it gets into hurricane season and storm season, power outages are a fact of life down there. And of course they are up here too, but down there, especially where you might get hurricanes that can do some serious damage, that's actually a very big care about, is how to make this product, store safely for a day or 2. So we're taking that into account as we bring the product mix forward. So
That's
can I ask a question to Jeff?
Sure.
Hey Jeff, just out of curiosity, do you have with that product? I know in development with these guys, there's so many spitball ideas. Is there you said safely? Is there a security system, like type of a unlock to that for kids?
There is going to be. I'd have to go back and look at the very latest drawings to see if we're integrating it from the get-go with this first one, or if it will be first release to market. Yes, definitely. There's a lockable mechanism going. I don't know that we've settled on the exact mechanism. Is it going to be a simple, literally put a little padlock on there, or some kind of thumbprint thing? But yes, definitely security for
cool.
that.
Okay. That's and then again, feel free to. It's a discussion. It's like it's a conversation. So it doesn't have to be just one person asking questions. So please do that for everybody. So we have a pretty, David. We have a pretty good kind of a spectrum of, let's say, one in a way B2B product for Mark. Jeff's product also, let's say, is B2C. Anybody who needs it will be buying it. Eric's product is in a way used by home builders or constructors, construction. I would say people who would use it for the work as such. So coming back to you, David, as a design studio director of design, how is the methodology change from this kind of a different domain to domain, if at all it has to change? How do you look at from a design studio to solve different elements and different problems in a different different domain?
Yeah, it's really interesting because it is pretty diverse. The different products that we're talking about here. And Mark, I thought it was really interesting the way you talked about, a startup versus, small business and how that's different, right? You are trying to have something new and disrupt the market. But when you do have something new, I think the common thing that I see, and at Sundberg-Ferar we have the opportunity to work with, you know, Fortune 100 companies, and I've worked inside those companies, and I've also done lots of startups, and I enjoy the startup process very much. It's probably my favorite. I've also done, you know, the brand new inventor. I got an idea, you know, and it's his personal money, you know, and friend in the neighborhood type of project, you know, where you know, it's every decision is pretty sensitive, right? It's personal. But for all of this, I think the process of just trying to stay focused on that original vision, because you're going to get a lot of input, a lot of different ideas. Believe me, this takes a team, right? You know, and there's distribution and finance, but you really got to keep that, whether it was your dad, you know, driving a truck or trying to improve your own daily routine, your job, make your job easier. What did it for you? What was that original vision? Because whether you're going to have to add some sort of locking device on your product, you maybe down the road, maybe you got the wrong size. Maybe you need to have 3 different sizes, but don't get focused on all those other details. Stay focused on that vision. And I think that's a big part of my job. And something about startups is cool, where I love the small, I mean, you're talking about the people with the idea, you're talking about you're talking with the founders. And so the decisions can be pretty quick. And whenever you run into trouble, it's always when you labor over a decision, when you can't make that, and this is where that whole gut level comes in. It's like, nope, it was a good idea. I loved it. Don't get, you know, disrupted by all these other thoughts or ideas that are coming in of what you need to do, because you got to get that first idea up and ready and need to be able to demonstrate it to people. And whether you're just trying to license that idea or whether you're trying to manufacture it yourself, you need to get to a point where you have something, and products will always evolve. That's why there's always a second generation of something, or once that new one hits the market, you come out with another one with better features, but don't try and do it all at once. So I think the process is really trying to stay to that original vision. And you know what, there's a lot of startups that don't make it, right? You know, need to have right amount of luck and right partners involved. But I don't know, that's I think that's and it's just like the Eric, you mentioned about being the idea guy. That's kind of what we need to do when we have a new product. We need to know when we need to stop designing. We need to know when to stop having ideas. This is it.
That's right.
Keep moving forward. And that happens a lot. It happens with big, huge companies, happens with startups, but I think it's more so when it's a startup, because bigger companies it might be more data driven how you make decisions versus you know, some of the more gut level and industry checks and personal experiences that go into startups.
What makes a complete sense, obviously, but about the element about the main point about making sure, trying to remain true to the vision, I think that's pretty an important part. Means I know we have Mr. Byron also on the call, and he leads that process for our studio from the innovation strategy perspective. Is we literally urge the startups, the people we work with, means as we always know, the colloquial element of everybody falls in love with their baby, but the element, the way we understand, is you should fall in the love of the attributes you are using to solve the problem out in the market. So the ideas can evolve. There might be a recalibration, a rearrangement of different features or different technology to finally make that happen. But then finally, if you want to fall in love with something, it's with the attributes and the reason you want the product to go and attest and solve those kind of problems. And that's, I think, that's the element of
I have to throw in this quick story then, because Eric, the very first meeting we had with them, he came in, presented his idea, and he's like, God, I really love it. I think this is great. He's like, but what do you guys think of it? Is it a good idea?
Right.
Is my baby pretty? So that was cool.
And that is a pretty important one about time. And that's where I think, even as Jeff was mentioning, or Mark also, about understanding that, okay, this can be solved. And then trying to make sure when you connect to the participatory design or co-creation design, trying to go to those super users. It can be a design studio. It can be, as Mark was saying, going to the actual people in the utilities and just trying to explain to them. And you're right. Sometimes you have to start asking the right questions, and people are good. They want to help. They want to, if they can see in somebody's passion and idea that that is going to help their lives get a little bit more better, a little bit more beautiful, there is no reason why not they would not offer you their advice. And then again, coming back to your point, David, you have to understand when to stop and actually start designing. Means ideas will always be there. How to make sure you triangulate them, or make quadrangulate them across different regions as such. So this is beautiful again. And let's, somebody wanted to say something, Jeff or Eric?
Mark?
Go ahead, Mark, but I got a comment after Mark.
Okay. Now, so I wanted to give an example on this, getting to value with the customer in those discussions. So, we put these devices on trucks that drive around a lot. And so for somebody just inherently, intuitively thinking about this, they say, well, can we charge the vehicle while we're driving in order to use the electric power when we're stopped? And you say, well, yes, you can do that. But most of our customers are utilities who produce electricity. And so do you want to burn additional fuel while you're driving, or do you want to plug in at night when you have overcapacity and buy from yourself instead of buying from your competitors, buying fuel from your competitors versus buying electricity from yourself? Or should we just put a windmill on the roof? And when you get to that level of the discussion, they're like, yeah, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. And so, yeah, we can put a tender on the device, but you're never really going to want that. Or, you may not want to pay for that. So we had a lot of that pushback. And to your other point, like Eric had said, you've got your day things and there are businesses and you like doing stuff. We took a Cortez sort of burn the fleet approach to this, where we crashed in our own cash and decided no matter what, we were going to succeed with an electrification solution. We knew we had a way to get from here to there, but we focused entirely on the next step. And, so I don't care where you're going. You got to achieve the next step on the way and know what that step is. You get to that step and it might determine that you need to take a fork in the path and go somewhere else. But as long as you know, like if you think you know where you're going to end up entirely or specifically, I think it's much harder to get there. I'd also say when, and I learned this in my career, I never moved to take over a new organization that wasn't messed up. Like going in and taking over something which operates perfectly is not my skill set. Like I change things, I don't operate them particularly. And so when you go into a space, a market, if it's operating perfectly and there's good mature customers, even if we can offer something better, we're going to have a hell of a time making any headway in there. But going into markets where there's a need, there are solutions that people hate, there are social dynamics between the businesses and competition, where things have reached an unhealthy point in attention, and we can wedge into that to help the customers get what they want and the competition to realize it's not worth fighting. The other thing is that ability to make decisions very quickly. Knowing that your competitors are gigantic means that for them to make a decision, they have to have a proposal, a review, a financial budget. It's got to get into the portfolio. They have to have it assigned to somebody. It's got to be in their management objectives, all of these things. By the time they've set up to start this project, we've already finished most of the design and we're working on new features and moving forward. That's one of the things I like about that, or the opportunity to.
That's beautiful about, as you're saying, not to enter peaceful markets, going where there is a little bit friction. Actually, we have a question from Andre. He's saying, as the saying goes, in crisis, there is opportunity. Is COVID-19 an opportunity or a restraint? Trying to look at from your market. I know, let's try to see from your domain, how would you look at what you are doing and then distance yourself away from Viatech and think about what might be the answer for somebody who's thinking of starting up in this time?
Oh yeah, I definitely wouldn't open a restaurant today. But within the markets that are out there, there's lots of people who want to see positive progress just in the world. Like they want to be part of something good. There's so much stressing folks out all of the time. And so, climate change is a concern, but also there's a big concern for fleets to get the most out of their assets. So if you have a truck which is going to idle for 60% of its time, by the time you have that truck, these trucks are purchased, held 10 years, and then sold into the secondary market. If you eliminate that idling, then you're going to save $11,000 to $16,000 a year. You'll pay for the product within 3 years, but you'll keep it for another 7. Your overall return on investment is going to be $70,000 or $80,000 during that time, and you're selling a truck into the secondary market that has 60% less engine hours and almost no mechanical PTO hours. So we can go to companies, particularly oil and gas business and the utilities, and say, you have these huge fleets of potentially stranded assets that we can help you get value from. And our customers' vehicles have to work when there is no power. And so these ones are not going to get switched to all electric engine or hydrogen or anything in the short term. When a hurricane comes, they're going to send thousands of trucks into a region, and there will be no charging infrastructure for them. The only thing reliably out there is gas. So there's a lot of headwinds that people are trying to address. And then the other side of it is that all of the utility companies have committed 5% of their budget to electrification of their fleet budgets. And so we know they have a goal, but they don't know how to achieve it. And so if you've got, let's say, $45,000 and you can buy a Tesla, or you can buy well, not Tesla, it's all electric, but if you buy a Prius or another hybrid out there, you got to run that thing for 8 hours a day to save the same amount of greenhouse gas emissions as our system reduces in 1 hour and 9 minutes. And so how do you get the biggest bang for your buck with your green dollars? So we find the winds blowing in a particular direction, which is towards greater efficiency and help the Edison Electric Institute members achieve their goals, and help them look at the plethora of options for how they could achieve that and contextualize. Do they really want to buy a car, or do they want to electrify a bucket truck or digger derrick or tractor trailer? What's the thing that is going to help them demonstrate to their customers that they're doing the right thing for the world? So there's a big PR part of this story too.
So, and I think this might be the question for all 4 of you, is what you also mentioned about the way you explained about this kind of an opportunity of why you are not utilizing your trucks and extracting more value from the already bought assets and then still retaining value for the secondary market. Means the way you explained it was like, man, why didn't people think about this before? And does a question like that stifle you in saying, like, was there a reason somebody did not do this? And how you as a startup said, like, no, we are still going forward with this?
It was a tipping point in time that drove this. It was the move from lithium ion phosphate batteries and the weight associated to those. We also looked at the power ranges that they were working in and found, an ideal power range to work in, not 300 volt or below 48. So it gave us cost advantages in that space. I almost feel like I've lost track of what you were looking for out of that question, but
no, the thing is, the top of question comes to the mind is like, hey, if I'm trying to find an opportunity in this ecosystem, it was there, but then why is there not a good product for there already? Why are people, 7.2 billion people, not thinking about it? How do you grapple with that kind of a question?
Oh, because it's super expensive and it's difficult. These are life-dependent applications. And so in order to build the system and control it in such a way that you would safely put somebody's life in its hands, in order to get that type of integrity in the drivetrain, there's about $100 million of investment in the drivetrain that we use. And so it can handle shock and cold and heat, and it doesn't catch on fire under any circumstances. At worst case, it will melt. everyone coming into the market, if they haven't got a strategy for how to build a component, and the supplier ecosystem, so we bring in an intact drivetrain and we help the manufacturer of that sell these drivetrains in multiple additional new markets. We help them broaden their business without them having the engineering expense of doing it themselves. So we can, our trick in this whole mix is we create the supervisory control system that mimics whatever input the drivetrain had been expecting, so that it will never know that it's not being used for its original purpose, even though we've faked it into thinking it has a driver that's doing now any number of things. So instead of the driver being somebody in the car, it's now somebody in a bucket, and we interpret that data so that the drivetrain integrity from the original supplier is never molested, so to speak. It will always be itself.
That makes sense.
That was a big deal. And somebody else jumping in, it's looked at as a micro market. They don't see where things are going from here. Because even when we have electric trucks, all electric trucks, you're still going to have to invert from that electricity to run an aerial device with hydraulics, and the chassis manufacturers are not going to do that. So even when this phase that we're in ends, our business model fluidly transitions to doing that control and inversion back the other way to hydraulics. Instead of going from our battery, we'll be going from the truck battery, but still the ecosystem stays in place. And there's just so much opportunity. This is an expanding cone that for the next 10, 15 years, as battery technology gets cheaper, denser, the number of things that become candidates for electrification gets broader and broader and broader. So the other piece is the universality of products, so that when we pivot from a bucket truck to an industrial tow truck or a shredder truck or an electric bridge in California, it's still the same device. All we're doing is some configuration changes so it knows how to provide the output pressure properly for that application, but we don't have to go through a whole new design effort in order to address these multiple applications. So our thing is, as new opportunities come up, we want to do minimal new engineering and focus on configuration.
That makes sense too. Coming back to Jeff, David, and Eric, how did this question come to your mind about why is not somebody solving that idea, and then how do you gather the confidence behind going there?
This is Jeff. That happens often when I get involved. Those of us who think of new products think of things that, why didn't somebody else think of this? This seems straightforward. Why aren't they doing that? You better believe that an investor is going to ask that question also. If you're ever going to look for money to help grow your enterprise, an investor is going to look at what you're doing and look at your market, and you've got to be prepared to answer that question. Why is this thing going to make it? The fact that nobody else is doing it, an investor is at least an initial signal that it's not worth doing, or there's not enough opportunity there. And I generally tend to address that with, engage the customer. Engage the customer early, often, and forever. It's a never-ending process. You can never know enough. Check your assumptions. And this happened with Bob and I in this current project. We're both technical in our background. We both have engineering backgrounds, and we had some blind spots, and we knew this, so we engaged lots of other people along the process. If you're a startup company, it doesn't have to be expensive. It can be as simple as engaging your personal network, your family, your friends, your colleagues with what you're doing, what you're thinking. You can do SurveyMonkey. It's pretty darn cheap. You can later on spend more money, as we have now done, and engage professionals to do focus groups and seriously engage customers. But that's a never-ending process because society changes, technology changes, wants change. Keep asking the question and checking your assumptions with the customer. And ultimately, you bring enough customer data to the investors, they will start to, some of them will start to believe in your vision. So,
how about you, Eric?
Well, I have a couple things I'll say these before I answer that question. But one is, I think that you asked the question to Mark, why he does that, or why isn't that something other people are doing? I think, to have Mark's mind and his ability to do that is one thing, but also for him to jump literally full body in and say, okay, I'm going to do this. A lot of people want to just be comfortable. They don't want to take that leap of faith to be like, okay, I'm going to change, you know, the dynamics of, you know, what's going on right now, what's available. It's a huge investment in time and money. And so the idea is one thing, but taking that leap is a whole different thing. And I mean, it can be extremely rewarding or it can be crushing. So, I mean, I think that that's part of it. And then the other thing that was brought up, that question that you asked about COVID-19, I look at COVID-19 as something that really, if you look at it, there's an opportunity for a significant amount of improvements in things that already exist. Whether it be, you know, whatever it is, PPE, ventilators, it out of crisis provides opportunity. Right, and this is worldwide. So I mean, from an inventor standpoint or a design standpoint, there's so many things that crisis or different things that happen on a grand scale, we're able to improve things that are already in market and do things from a design standpoint and actually make them better. I don't know if that's a little bit out of place, but I think that that's from a perspective of it, we look at things that are already designed. It gets my mind thinking how we can improve or how we can add things to the market to make things better, whether this is here for a year or 10 years or it never goes back to the same exact thing. It gives us an opportunity. Yeah, I agree with Mark, don't open a restaurant, but it gives us an opportunity to do things that will, you know, possibly change how we as humans live as well in a different scenario.
Yeah, and that's very right, because crisis opportunity depends on where you are in the industry already. Because right now, as COVID-19 explained, we had suddenly and bifurcation of the essentials and the non-essentials, and somehow everything was, I think the first few months, people with understanding what are the needs of that essential industry. But now, since we are in the month 5 or month 6 kind of a thing, now we see how anybody or everybody can pivot and try to grab some newer things, the entire telecommuting, telemarketing, the products for things like Zoom meeting, all that industry is terribly expanding at a completely different scale. So there are opportunities everywhere. It depends on which side already you had stacked up your capabilities, and that some of them is a luck factor also. Coming to David, kind of pivoting the question a little bit differently, because you are on the other side, I would say, of the equation. So there are always going to be, I mean, we talked about the barriers or the question about why not this or why not that. How do you, means you are a studio, you belong to a studio, and I'm trying to distance myself away from as being a studio member. The doors are open, inventors, startups, entrepreneurs, mad scientists, till professional teams, they come in. Everybody has an idea or two. How do you help them understand if that idea is good, bad, or otherwise? Does that happen? How often that does happen? And how do you let them go and see the bigger picture? Because sometimes people come really attached in saying like, this is it, everybody should buy it, it should just fly off the shelf. It doesn't happen that way. What kind of an method or approach you typically choose to help them find the correct way?
Yeah, and so that could vary as well, and you need to do that. I think Jeff was just talking about, trying to use your personal network, and I think it starts with the people in that room and just the experience we have, and what the opportunity is, what the product is, because not all products are created equal, right? I mean, there's a great big thing where you want to save the world and maybe design and develop a machine to clean up the garbage patch in the Pacific Ocean, versus someone that found a better way to butter your popcorn, right? So they're very different ideas there. One, trying to help and save the planet versus just improve the lives or an everyday experience for somebody. And so that could vary. That could just be asking that personal network. I think there's all kinds of ways we can do design research, and that's typically what we do at Sundberg-Ferar, instead of market research and trying to understand how big of a market opportunity it is. It's like, let's go find the people that are your customer and let's talk to them. Let's do some design investigation research, and how are they doing things now versus how this idea would improve their lives. So you can get some good feedback. I don't think it needs to be a lot of people. Like I said, it depends what you're looking for, how big that audience is, and how, if there's a million people in the world that want to use this idea, and how many people do you need to talk to find out, versus you're just trying to design something for 100,000 people. You need to talk to 5 of those people, and so it's just aligning the right effort to go and talk to those people for how big that opportunity is, or how much risk there is in that.
I think you invoked a very valid point about the element how we say is the market typically has no obligation to be kind to your product just because you're a startup or an entrepreneur, right? Means that emotional kind of not the empathy, the sympathy part is not existent in the market. No matter what, you're still competing around different products. If there are some competitions which might be pushed in by a mature enterprise company too. So how to still make sure to add that uniqueness, the compelling element, and focus on the people, focus on your tribe, and making sure you're trying to put all those attributes over there. One thing I think, David, I think you were also mentioning this, is we always say at the studio, stop by being all things to all people, start by being something to someone. And that's where it is, how soon we can make sure we can focus to solving the problems of that tribe, because it helps to making sure the crosshair is right there on the target versus somewhere else. I would like to ask the money question to all the startups, like, how did you approach the element of raising money or finding money? But before that, David, as a design studio, you see people coming in, and there is an let's say a creative timeline of an idea gets invented or in the mind of an inventor till all the way to commercialization. From a studio perspective, or just say from personal perspective, what might be the ideal way for the point of entry for a startup to come to a design studio? Is there a point of entry, and then what might typically is a point of departure for them to go out in the big bad world? So what would be the eligibility or criteria? I'm going to ask the same question to the afternoon panel of the accelerators and the incubators too. What would be typically the requirement, I would say, or I would say the mental preparation for a startup to meet a design studio to go forward? How early is too early, or how late is too late?
Yeah, no, that's funny, because I keep wanting to answer it the same way, because every opportunity is a little bit different, right? Some people come in and we'll just tell me, you know what, we really need to go out and talk to some people first before we go any further on this. Some people come in and the idea is kind of have something there, right? And now we need to figure out how to optimize it for whoever their customer is, or optimize it for manufacturing. So it literally could be an idea in your head, which, some people come in and there's no other, someone could be buying, I think Eric came in with a couple of samples of other things that he's seen in the market, but never really had a sketch or a vision of what the product should be. He knew what he wanted it to do, right? And so, okay, I wanted to do these things. Now, how do I go ahead and make this into something real, and with all of the, not only kind of stylistic goals, but functional goals, and, again, put those things together. And now you've got, the emotional part of it all kind of coming together. So it really is, and I think we've got listening toolboxes, and like what we have to find out what our client knows and what they don't know, and we're going to help answer some of those knowledge gaps through there. And it could be, again, what type of price points does this thing enter the market? Because I mean, we could design this, but you're never going to be able to sell it because maybe there's some other competing things out there. So it really does have a variety of things that we can tackle. But we ask a lot of questions. We have more than one meeting before we can write a proposal. We really need to kind of get the right people involved. And if that's more from the engineering side, or more from design, or more from the design research, we kind of bring those people in, keep asking more questions, and formulate the right plan. But if you don't even have a napkin sketch, I think you can come in with an idea. But And I think, Mark, you were saying that you need to know what's the next step. And some people, the next step is we need to get raise some capital. So what do we need to do to get people excited, willing to invest in this? And that's usually more than a sketch, right? It's a little bit of a business case as well. And, that could be talking about how big the market is, or who you're competing against, or what gap this fills in the market. So there's, again, all the different, we can keep talking about all the different variety of things or way to tackle something at what point. But I think anyone could come in at just about any point.
Yeah, it makes sense. Again, connecting with what Mark was saying and you're saying is, it's an idea, then eventually it goes into the world of concept, then in the world of prototype, and then eventually it will go in the world of production. And that will be a typical journey. And then I've been connecting to your point, David, is sometimes as a startup too, there might be constraints about time and budget. No matter what, we have to respect that. And exactly as you said, David, okay, what is the next step going to be worth for you? As you said, if it's going to be raising money via Kickstarter, let's look at that. Don't try to solve all the fillets and radiuses and the color and the tint for the final product. Let's try to see and make what's going to be worth for the next project. If you're going to be raising money from an innovation convention or something, and you're going to pitch an idea, and there are 7 inventors or let's say VC people looking at your idea, what might be the need from them at that point? So trying to make sure how to, I would say, calibrate the expectations of what the next steps are would help the idea grow, when I say grow, in the better elements as such too. So coming back to either one of you can start about the element of the idea is always there, the passion is there, you see the pain points, the frustration, the aggravation, and you want to solve it. And for that you need to have, apart from time and efforts, money also. Money always becomes a pretty, means one of the elements that many startups fail is because of undercapitalization. So let's go one by one to see how and what were the available methods for you to raise capital, and then finally what worked for you.
I'll go ahead and go.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So yeah, I've been involved in many startups for the past couple of decades, and things shift over time and so forth. The state has gotten much better at supporting early stage companies with, I would even call it pre-seed capital, where it's that first 10 or 20 or 30K to build a prototype. I happen to live in the world of physical products. If you're building an app or, software as a service or something like that, you can do it on very little capital because you just need a PC and some time. But when you build physical products and design physical products, it takes money. And digging up, and investors want to see skin in the game. I think we all know that. So be expecting, if you're an entrepreneur, be expecting that you're not going to make a rich salary. It's going to be expected that you've invested some money into this business, and that might be, it's dependent upon your situation. If you're a college kid who graduated with $70,000 in debt, they're not expecting you to put $100,000 into the company, but they're expecting you to find, a way, I don't know, to finance $5,000 or something for that first prototype. It's a lot easier than it used to be in a sense of the tools are better. 3D printing is incredibly invaluable for making that first unit, as we've done with SF. But an investor is going to want to see some of that skin in the game. In terms of where to find money, in this particular case with personal cooling technologies, we were lucky in that early on we got a substantial commitment from a patient-friendly investor, and it would be an angel investor. So we haven't had money worries on that front. Most of the time, most startups I deal with, that's not the case. You're always looking for that next piece of money. The state has gotten much better. If you look back 10 or 15 years, Michigan has got much better, and other states probably too, about helping supply that first 10 or 15 or $20,000 of out-of-pocket costs. It doesn't go to pay your salary, but it'll pay to help you build that prototype, which is what you need, because almost never is an idea going to get funded. You need to be able to show them something. You need to be able to show them a functional app. You need to be able to show them, in the case of personal cooling technologies, Bob built this unit by himself early on, the design built it by himself. You need to be able to show something, a viable, there's the term out there, minimally viable product. You don't need to have it to that stage yet, but you need to help the investor see how you can get there from what you have today that they're 50 or 100,000 if you're talking to an angel, will help you
Proof
get
of concept, maybe, right?
Yeah, exactly right. So the stream of capital goes from, pre-seed dollars at the state level that go through the smart zones in the state of Michigan and programs for that. Then you step up to angel investors who typically do tens of K or 50 to 100K, or maybe do a small round of a couple $100,000. Beyond that is venture capital, and I actually haven't used venture capital probably in at least 10 years. I've gone to a model of going from the angels to help you build that pre-production unit to looking for a strategic partner as that next piece of big capital. Somebody who, an entity who would see excessive value in your product that would help their primary business. And they may well be an acquirer of you. They may just want your service to be available to them because it makes something for them much easier, cheaper, better, faster, whatever. And they get it in a heartbeat because if you deal with a venture capitalist, you have to teach them your business. So they're going to watch you for 4, 5, 6 months at a minimum. You're not going to get money for a while. If you happen to hit the right strategic partner, they're going to get your value proposition pretty quickly. And then it's a matter of convincing and, talking about a deal and, is it $100,000 you're going to need or $500,000, whatever. You don't need to teach them your business. They see quickly how you can fit in. So with that, I'll pause and turn the mic over to somebody else.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Yep. Mark.
Okay. So it was really important both, when we first started out, essentially I told everybody I knew, here's what we're doing, here's what the plan is, and we're going to develop this world-changing electrohydraulic hybrid system. And most of them, had worked with me. It's funny, most of the investors that I have were former partners or employees at my previous job. And then some friends as well, and that plus myself. So yeah, skin in the game was a big deal. And when I say burn the fleet, I was like spent half my 401k investing in this company. There was no way we were going to fail because my wife would kill me, which, no choice is a great motivator. And so you'd spend all night thinking about how to solve the problem. But I would also say to Jeff's point, the South Carolina Research Authority, we applied to them as a client company. They gave us $15K to do a pilot in Greenville, South Carolina. That was successful. Based on the success of that, they got us a second grant with which we bought a demo truck. The demo truck got us our first 20 unit orders. They did a first round of investment at $250 and a second round of investment at $250. We've avoided outside angels and VCs and are going straight to the strategics and PE level right now because we're jumping up substantially in orders. And with the strategics, utility investors, things like that, they want the product in order to drive down their own costs. So if they invest in the company and buy the product, they relatively guarantee their own investment as long as they don't invest so much that we become an official affiliate. And that's getting into nuance of law. But and so the strategics give the private equity firms the confidence to come in and do that $5 to $25 million investment range. And once you're at the PE stage, they're not investing in you coming up with some new fancy thing. They want to know you have a product that's in revenue and the market's gigantic, and their money is to help you accelerate and capture that market much faster. The VCs specifically seem to want, VCs and angels 10x over 5 to 7 years. And they expect you to sell the company. We want somebody who's in the long term because we intend to sell off product lines, but not the entire business. We see the versatility of the technology, so we have to have somebody who understands that and then also wants to work with us as we transition from a hardware to an as-a-service model, layer in consulting services with engineers, which will lead to more engineering and design elements, stand up our own data analytics, and we see an opportunity in this market for a new type of analytics that focuses on platforms rather than trucks and devices. So they have to know that This, while it sounds like a lot, is actually a coordinated series of capabilities that we intend to layer on. The other thing that's really important, I'm totally off topic, but this is interesting to me, is you want to look at your ratio of you to customers. So when somebody calls us and they get direct support from us, we want them to have 500 trucks or more. And if they don't have that many, we want them to go through our distributors or the OEMs, because we can't afford to service those small accounts. We're focusing on the largest ones and then enabling them to install and support their own products. But for the smaller stuff, we'd be out of business if we went ones and twosies through this whole thing. So curate your customers is a big deal. Okay, well, that was a lot. I'll hand it over.
Eric?
So much different scale than, I kind of feel like a fish out of water here a little bit, but our product that we have through you guys is privately funded between me and the partner, and so it's a lot different. There's a product that I'm considering going through investment, and I've also approached them, and so I'm new to that game, so I'm kind of listening here a little bit from a standpoint of that, and kind of gleaning as much knowledge as I possibly can from you guys. So it's obviously nice not having to go out and get money from our standpoint yet through the patenting of it. So I don't have a lot to add to this, but that's kind of where we're fortunate enough to be able to fund that personally so far.
And that's perfectly okay, Eric. Means right now, so you're still putting your own skin in the game to
Yeah, correct.
to get the idea of, literally skin in the game. And so it's a good way to see the timelines, and maybe in the afternoon also you may want to attend the panel with the accelerators and the incubators. So there might be a little bit more options available, or they might tell us more about sources of money as such. We still have 11 minutes as such. I'm going to ask every one of you one question about what might be some parting thoughts for startups, both what to do or what not to do. And we can do that 2-3 minutes per head. But before that question, maybe I should direct that to David Thimm. It's from Olga from the chat. Why should entrepreneurs prioritize investing into design early in their business?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a great one. Now, again, I think even Jeff was talking about, whether it was, software or physical products. If we just talk about, because they are very different. We talk about, the physical product world. We're really trained to see things from that whole user experience. And I think if you invest in design, not only the mechanical, the functional things, but those emotional things that go into a product, it's that people-product relationship. And that's what we specialize in. I think as a product innovation studio, having this diverse set of skill sets, and the fact that, we're not just engineers, and I'm required, I tell people I have an honorary engineering degree because I just work so closely with engineers my whole career. It's never been a hand over the wall. And I think when you get, investing in design, especially in a studio like ours, you're just getting a well-rounded perspective that's going to think about all of those things, not only from, manufacturing and features and functionalities, but how people are going to touch, interact, and use this every day. And I don't know, that's what we're good at. So I'm pretty proud of that.
But that's perfect. And Olga, if I might want to add, other thing is we as human species, we have to understand, or maybe as a startup, that yours is not the only problem they have in that ecosystem. There will be a couple of other things pushing and probing about how that product is going to be stored, to be maintained, to be serviced. There's so many other features or elements over there. And as we go with the industrial design thinking element is, we try to make sure it finds its fit into that ecosystem as such. So that's the one part. Another part is when we say design, it is human-centric design. So One part is where, okay, we might be an enterprise where we have our technology, we have already have, let's say, invested into some assembly lines and all those things. So this is what we can come up with. But the human-centric design is what we typically believe in, is making sure, let's try to see and understand what are their pain points, their needs, their wants, their dreams, their desires, and then trying to come back and say, okay, out of these things, our product can solve those emotional desires appropriately. So I think I think myself, David and Gray, we literally cringe every time. We love Shark Tank and we love all those programs. But there is not one time that Mr. Wonderful or anybody asks the element about, let's talk about human centricity. Let's talk about the fundamental aspects of industrial design, because no matter what, we have to respect the statistics. In the US, at least, it's around 85% of the startups fail in the first 3 years. And I think at least we believe, and we are a biased design studio, why we are not tackling that question way up in the front. And again, there is no hubris here. I think we understand design is an integral part of the entire business, but we also understand design is not the only part in the entire business. So the other elements have to be there: a strong engineering front, a strong business savvy mind, a strong logistics and accounts and legal parts too. But along with that, I think it's time right now for design to be a part of that kind of an initial discussion, to make sure we are really solving the pain problems in the market and following our followers as such. So let me hold that thought over there. We still have decent time to go around the table, Mark, Jeff, or Eric, or we can go other ways now. Eric, Jeff, and Mark. I'm just looking at the screen.
Yeah, I'll start. So, yeah, closing thoughts. You know, for anyone who, you know, might be wanting to either create a product to license or to do a startup, first and foremost, I have nothing but high regards for SF. It's almost coming to be like a bucket list item. You know, I honestly, you know, whether you're looking to start a business that would be, you know, where you create product and product and product, or whatever it might be, that's your life then. Regardless of the fact, you know, coming to you guys with an idea out the gate, getting your input on it in the initial meeting, and then going through the several phases of it is thoroughly enjoyable. So from that standpoint, you get the value just out of the experience, honestly, in the minds that you guys have in, you know, between David, Javak, Josiah, Will. That team, that collaboration is thoroughly enjoyable to work with. And it's obviously something that if another idea comes along that I have that's, you know, viable, I'll be coming back. So from that standpoint, it kind of spurs on just that much more thought process. And, you know, again, when I go into an experience like I did with you guys, it continues to feed that hunger to, you know, innovate, or it's just another trigger for your mind to start firing ideas. And whether it's, you know, innovating product, or in my own job, reverse engineering, thinking like, oh, well, David said, let's look at it from this perspective. Let's look at all the angles, whether it's related or unrelated to the product, and come backwards from that and pick apart the you know, the solutions to the end result. It's just been a really great experience, whether it's my only product or the first of many. It doesn't really matter. It's been very enjoyable to go through the process.
I love that. Means experimentation is what you live for, and it's very apparent in the passion you have. And actually, what you said about pleasure and fun. Charles Lee Eames, one of the amazing designers, now they are no more. The pioneers of designers, they actually said that there is no reason why not. You cannot design pleasure as a part of an technical specification in a product. So that's perfectly great. Thank you for that. Jeff, you're next.
Sure. I got 3 quick comments. First of all, engage the customer early, often, and forever. Again, it can start with your network. It doesn't need to cost you money, but you need to check your assumptions, because you have hidden biases, and I know mine, and I'm sure I have other ones that I'm not aware of. So engage the customer is number 1. Number 2, we haven't talked about this much here, but if you're starting a business, you really need some type of sustainable competitive advantage. It's, you know, approximately called secret sauce. Some people call it that, to be informal. but you need to have some reason that customers will buy from you and not the next business. Sometimes that may be a patent, it may be trade secrets and intellectual property, it may be business model. A model that, for example, one from my generation is Dell Computer. Dell Computer pioneered going direct to the customer, and they cut out the middleman, which knocked out 40% of the cost in selling PCs. That's how they became a 10 billion, or whatever they are today, company. It doesn't have to always be about the IP. You can figure out a new way to deliver product to the customer better, faster, cheaper. You know, Amazon Prime, perfect example. But you must have some type of competitive advantage. I would not recommend you developing a competitive advantage based on cost unless you have something that, say, is 1/10 of the next guy. Because if you're only 20% cheaper, by the time you get your product to market, they will probably have innovated their product and knocked out some cost. Third thing I'll say is when you're raising money to build your enterprise, the key variable is time. And the time issue is how long can you survive until you land some money? It's called runway. How long is your runway? My experience has been that I would say the majority of the things I've worked on, and perhaps even a large majority, I think the right investor is out there somewhere. But you're not going to get it on the first door you knock on, or the 10th door, or the 50th door. It might be door number 350. Do you have the time to work your way through those first 349 to get to number 350 that gets you to the person or entity who invests in your enterprise? So that's a key element in your planning and thinking is the time. How long can you survive?
That's beautiful. Though second last and the last point that literally drives completely the point about when you say time. The time for you, for me, the president, the emperor, a leader is exactly the same. Then it comes down to the energy of how much the intensity you can build, bring to the project, and what the density of what you can work with the partners. So time along with those other things which can make sure we can do in an accelerated way. And the earlier part you mentioned was that the competitive advantage, right? Means, yeah, your product has to be unique. It has to be a compelling element for you people to desire for it. And I think as a design studio, we believe that design is sometimes the intuitiveness, the eleganceness, the cleverness of the arrangement of things also can itself be an highly competitive advantage as such. So thank you for that, Jeff. And Mark, you are on mute.
Ooh, yep. I'm off mute. Okay, so continuing to focus on the core of who you are as a business. As you get bigger, then, as we get bigger, there's a push for us to become a manufacturer. And we are not a manufacturing company. We can do that. We do installations, but we are not really an installation company. We create the technology and the solution, and then we work with the partner ecosystem in order to essentially build, operate, and transfer those features out as we're able to do so. So if, there's the vanity of saying, oh, I've got a huge manufacturing facility and I've got all these people, but really that's not my core business. And there are businesses in our area that are awesome at that stuff, and they'll deliver efficiency in both the component costs and the assembly process while defraying risk if I move it out to them. We don't maintain internal HR. We work with a service provider for that. We don't do our own accounting. We have an accounting firm that handles all of our receivables and payments and stuff. And all of that is to ensure that there's high quality or high touch delivery of those capabilities to our customers without us specifically having to have our hands on that, so we can focus on engineering and working with customers. And in that, we're able to stay as a team small. There are 11 of us today, but an ecosystem of probably 35, 40 people involved in the assembly of our product before and after, so in the manufacturing and delivery process. So we're trying to stay ourselves. And sometimes you're going to miss a beat. Like our communications to investors was not awesome, but I don't think that they intended us to put our investment into having awesome investment communication, especially if it meant that our product development was going to go under. So keep first things first, focus on the core business, and try to get everything extraneous out and recognize that almost everything is available in the world to consume as a service. And so leverage the businesses who are great at their piece so you can focus on the stuff you're great at.
Awesome. That's beautiful. I know Angelo is on the standby, but before that, David, you want to add a couple of nuggets?
Yeah, I just think, you know, if people should go for it. If you're a startup and you get an idea, I think there's a lot of work you can do before you invest one dime. It's your labor, it's your time, getting on the internet, finding other things out there that inspire you, that you know, would love your product to have. Just write things down, do a thumbnail sketch, just kind of like mature the idea a little bit. But all that is, and if you're passionate about the idea and think it's great, you just, you know, that becomes just fun, right? And at some point, when you're ready, talk to somebody like us about it. GVOC's always ready to talk to somebody. Linnea's always ready to talk to somebody and kind of start to give some advice and some direction, some guidance. And, you know, if there's an opportunity there, then we can talk about it. Because, I mean, Jeff, I love your runway example. And I keep saying this, not every runway needs to be the same length. There's some short runways that you could just have a Cessna and take off, and then you've got a big, you know, jumbo cargo plane. So every idea might have, you know, a different length of runway and investment and time that needs to go in to get it off the ground. So again, get started, have fun, pursue your passion, and then we're here when you need us.
Awesome. Thank you once again, Eric, Jeff, Mark, David. It was great to have your comments. I know somehow we have to end this session. The conference is still going along. We will be having a couple of housekeeping announcements again from Linnea. And I know Chef Angelo is already here. By the way, feel free, you can just unmute and unvideo yourself. But the next session is going to be exceptionally amazing, where we have a celebrity chef coming us and doing a live demonstration of not just food, but even planning food prep for the week for younger parents or for kids or for anybody to make sure they are not investing time in that and still making an amazing, beautiful food. So thank you again. Feel free to remain in unmute and unvideo position and be a part of the conversation. Keep on asking questions, and thank you for your time.